He supported me. He supported me by holding my shoulder so that I can stand. So we moved with him up to the place where I got my first aid, and that's when I was taken to hospital.
How did you get the injuries?
By the drone.
Right, and then so you were taken to hospital. Was this still in Ukraine? Did you get the help that you needed, the treatment you needed?
The first treatment, which was first aid, it was done in Ukraine. That's when I was evacuated to Moscow.
And then what happened?
Now I was treated. Now I can't, nothing more. I was treated in Moscow for several weeks. Through that, I got better and better. When I saw I'm not being supported fully, I looked for a way how to escape so that I can go back to Kenya.
That is the story of a Kenyan who escaped from Russia. He was lured with the promise of a different job, but when he got there, he was sent to the battlefront. Rob, sorry to talk over you there.
Yeah, what are the authorities saying about this?
Well, they say that they have repatriated 18 people, that is as of last week, and they say that they have also set up a fully fledged counseling unit that offers psychosocial support for the returnees and their families and other Kenyans in distress. But speaking to this man whom we're not identifying, he said that he's yet to receive any counseling and that he's still very disturbed because of what he witnessed on the battlefront.
Well, what he said was certainly very harrowing. Very difficult for us, though, to verify his story.
It is difficult to verify, and that is because he is the first returnee, essentially, that we have managed to speak to. We've been trying to speak to another one, but unfortunately, he's in such bad state, it hasn't been possible to interview him yet. So clearly, they need a lot of support, and this is all we know from their experience and from what they saw on the battlefront.
All right, thanks very much indeed. Well, we're going to stick with issues related to Ukraine now. Because Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky has given details of an updated peace plan offering Russia the potential withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the east and the creation of a demilitarized zone in their place, detailing the 20-point plan agreed by the US and Ukrainian envoys in Florida at the weekend. President Zelensky said the Russians would respond on Wednesday once the Americans had spoken to them. Well, we can now head over to the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, speak to Alexander Merezhko, who's a member of Parliament and head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of that Parliament. Welcome back to Newsday.
Thank you for having me.
When we spoke to you a few days ago, you weren't aware of what the Americans and your team had been discussing. We now know what is in this 20-point plan, according to President Zelensky. What do you make of it broadly?
Well, first of all, when you look at the text of this peace plan, you see that the crucial issues haven't been resolved yet, and several sticking points remain. For example, the so-called territorial issue. By that, what is meant is Russian ludicrous demand for Ukrainian troops to withdraw from the rest of the Donetsk region. Second sticking point is about the status of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But also, when you look at this plan, you see that many points are too abstract, and, for example, with regard to security guarantee, you don't see details, and it's a crucial issue. So that's why, well, this is very kind of hazy peace plan as of now, but we understand that this is the draft. But the point, to me, seems more political than legal, for example. It's about now Putin, whether he will reject or not this peace plan.
Yeah, we should find out within a week or so. One of the areas that has come out of this, I suppose the most important area, is this compromise that President Zelensky is putting forward, where Ukrainian forces would pull back from parts of Donetsk and Russian forces would also, leaving what's being called the demilitarized zone. Just explain what a demilitarized zone would be in your understanding.
That's the key problem, because I cannot imagine it happening. I cannot imagine this happening in practical terms, because, you know, the issue remains how you can guarantee ceasefire along this front line and how it can be done, because we don't know about how wide it can be, whether there will be settlements, under whose oversight or control will be this demilitarized zone. So these issues remain, and they haven't been solved yet.
Right, and so there needs to be much more detailed work done then, in your view, does there, before we can say this is some kind of an agreement that might even begin to work?
Yes, exactly. And to me, more logical, more reasonable, what should we do? It is to return to the initial ceasefire proposal by President Trump. He was talking about unconditional ceasefire, and that's the only starting point. And after that, we can discuss in more detail, because as you can see, there are lots of details to be resolved.
Yeah, we heard President Zelensky say that the Americans are trying to find a way for this withdrawal not to be a withdrawal, but because this is the difficult area here, isn't it? Neither Ukraine nor Russian forces want to pull back, fearing the other will move in, and so there's going to have to be some kind of international peacekeeping force policing this area. So it'll be neither Ukrainian nor Russian, I suppose. Is that your understanding?
Well, in theory, it can be discussed, but again, who will agree to put boots on the ground? Because normally, for example, if we take peacekeeping operations by the UN, they can do it only when there is a very firm ceasefire agreement and when there is no danger for their lives. But in case of Russia, you're never sure. All our previous experience with the Minsk Accords shows that Russians use all kinds of provocations. They can violate any kind of ceasefire anytime. That's why it might be too dangerous for the peacekeeping troops on the ground.
If the Russians did say they would pull their forces back, would you trust that they would?
I absolutely trust that Russians cannot be trusted at all, because they're doing everything to undermine any kind of remnants of credibility of trust.
Thank you very much indeed. Alexander Merezhko there, a member of the Ukrainian Parliament, also head of that Chamber's Foreign Affairs Committee, joining us from Kyiv.
It can't have escaped your attention that in much of the world, it's now Christmas Day, and there are so many traditions that come with this holiday.
Yeah, many of these traditions are unique to individual nations. A great number, though, are shared around the world, and so for a more detailed look at some of these and how they've developed over these years, I've been speaking to James Cooper, who is a Christmas expert here in the UK.
Up until the Georgian Victorian period, lots of the Christmas celebrations started at Christmas and went on for the 12 days of Christmas, ending at Epiphany, which is the 6th of January. Because Advent, the time before Christmas, was quite a religious time of penitence and sort of, looking forward to the Christmas coming. And then during the Industrial Revolution, when people had to work in factories and things, you had Christmas Day and Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, off if you were lucky, and then you had to go back to work. So lots of the Christmas celebrations that happened after Christmas got put forward before Christmas to how we have them now.
And what would you say are the main traditions of Christmas now that are universal, but that people in many nations with a large Christian population would perhaps recognise?
When going to a carol service, having Christmas trees, and things like that, and it's called Santa as well. But sort of the Christmas tree has sort of become a global figurehead of Christmas, and that sort of decoration sort of almost unites the world in Christmas now.
There are some things which are specific, some might say peculiar to some nations. We were talking on the programme yesterday, I mentioned Christmas crackers, and Anne, who's in Nairobi, had to look it up online. Is this a peculiarly British phenomenon, or do lots of countries have Christmas crackers?
No, it's mainly Britain, some Australia, some New Zealand, a bit of Canada, but that's about it. Christmas crackers are pretty much a British thing. When they started back in the Victorian times, they were invented by Tom Smith, who was a London sweet seller, and the story goes that he'd been over to France and seen how they wrapped their sweets and candies up in fancy papers and thought he could do that with his sweets coming back over here. And then the legend says that he was sitting next to a log fire one night and he went crackly pop. And he thought he would be excited if he had an explosion when you opened his sweets. And so he first marketed them as we know them now in 1861, but they weren't called crackers back then. They were called Bangs of Expectation, which is a really marvellous name.
It's a great name. I wonder why they changed it to crackers.
Yeah, well, they were also called Cossacks. early on, due to sort of the Cossack riders had a reputation for riding around firing their guns in the air, so that anything to do with explosives was sort of put on them. And then when the original Tom Smith died, his sons took over the firm and introduced the hats that you have to have and put on your head when you're eating your Christmas dinner and look silly sitting at the Christmas table. And then early on, there wasn't the bad jokes, it was more of a sort of upstanding motto or moral that you could, or a poem or something, to read out at the Victorian Christmas table. But into the 20th century, those changed into the terrible jokes that we have today.
And when you look around the world, are there some traditions, some festivities which other parts of the planet would find maybe a little odd, or certainly they would at least be alien to them?
Well, yeah, I mean, Japan is a very interesting case because Japan has no historical connection to Christianity. So if Christmas in Japan is very much a secular holiday, it's not a national holiday, but lots of people will be off school or have the day off work because it's near their winter breaks. So it's seen as a winter holiday, but it's almost more like their Valentine's Day. It's a day when families come together. You might go with have a walk with your significant other looking at the twinkly lights. But one mad thing in Japan is that their traditional meal for Christmas in Japan is KFC.
Fried chicken?
Yes, but specifically KFC, not just fried chicken, it has to be KFC.
From that specific global fast food chain, right?
Yeah, it started in the 70s when there were the American air bases over there, so KFC started having their shops over in Japan, and they saw a big market because, you know, of people having chicken or turkey around the world, but they saw a market of these are all these people that don't know what to have for Christmas. So in 74 they ran a campaign called Kentucky for Christmas, and it just stuck, and now you have to pre-book your bucket, and you will be queuing for up to 3 to 4 hours in some places in Tokyo to pick up your bucket of chicken on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Of course, other fast food chains are available if people want to keep for those. Shopping, of course, I suppose, is the universal aspect that many people will associate with Christmas, but not in countries, presumably, where Christmas isn't celebrated as a religious festival.
No, well, it's funny that, I mean, much of sort of the Middle East and countries like that, particularly where you have an expat population, it has become a secular commercial holiday, and even if there's no sort of Christian connection to it, if you go to the shopping malls, they will have large Christmas trees and Santas on displays, and they might be marketing things for Christmas, but in many countries just giving small items or money is a Christmas item rather than sort of the big Christmas celebrations and presents that we associate in the West.
James Cooper there, who's a Christmas expert here in the UK. So, Anne, Christmas crackers, something which was an unheard of before concept for you, I think, yesterday. I'm waving one at you down our camera link between London and Nairobi.
I can see it.
So it's a short cardboard sheet wrapped in brightly coloured paper. This one's got red and green stars on it. We will pull this later on and see what the terrible joke is inside. There's also probably going to be a paper hat, which I'll have to wear for the rest of the programme as well. But I have dug out some Christmas cracker jokes for you to enjoy, if enjoy is indeed the right word. Why did Santa's helper see the doctor? Because he had low elf-esteem. And who delivers Christmas presents to cats? It is Santa to cats. Yes, it is Santa Paws, of course. They don't get better, I'm afraid, but that is what is contained in Christmas crackers. We'll maybe talk.
Sounds like fun.
A bit
on
later
the Christmas
on.
table with for families, right?
You're being so polite. We'll talk a bit later on. I want to hear about some of your Christmas traditions in Kenya, having told you about Christmas crackers here in the UK. You're with Newsday on the BBC World Service.
This is the BBC World Service with Joe Dwyer looking into the politics of elephant conservation.
Botswana has the largest elephant population in the world, but it's a burden as well as a blessing.
If an elephant comes in someone's field, it's a disaster because it will just hit everything.
The government is double stressed. There is pressure to conserve. There's also pressure to compensate and look after these people whose livelihoods are compromised.
The government's always is looking at ways to fund its conservation efforts. In 2019, Botswana reintroduced so-called trophy hunting.
All the monies, they come to our country, so the country again benefits in different departments.
It's an emotive subject. I think it's toxic, and we can find solutions when we are open-minded than when we are closed.
Elephant Politics. To listen, search BBC The Documentary online or wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Hello, you're with Newsday from the BBC World Service with Anne Soy in Nairobi and Rob Young in London.
Coming up, Somalis prepare to vote in local elections despite security concerns and opposition boycotts.
And as the Danish Postal Service plans to end letter deliveries, we'll hear about the joy of sending and receiving letters. But first, a summary of the latest news.
BBC News with David Harper. The Justice Department in the United States has said it may need a few more weeks to release all the documents relating to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The statement follows the discovery of more than 1 million potentially relevant documents. The Conservative candidate for the presidential elections in Honduras, Nasri Asfoura, has officially been declared the winner more than 3 weeks after the actual vote. He was backed by President Trump. The runner-up, Salvador Nasrallah, has said he does not accept the result. The heir to the influential Zia family in Bangladesh, Tariq Rahman, is due to arrive back in the country shortly after 17 years in exile. He's the leader of the largest political party, the BNP, and son of former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia. Pope Leo, who's celebrating his first Christmas as the head of the Roman Catholic Church, will deliver the traditional Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square today. His predecessor, Pope Francis, regularly used such occasions to address international affairs, and Pope Leo could take a similar approach. Syrian officials say they've arrested a senior Islamic State leader near Damascus. Taha al-Zoabi, who's also known as Abu Omar Tabia, was detained along with several of his aides. The authorities in Russia's southern Krasnodar region say a drone attack has set fire to 2 oil storage tanks in the port of Temryuk. Police in Australia are investigating what they've described as a suspicious fire after a car with a Hanukkah decoration was set ablaze in Melbourne. The empty car with a sign celebrating the Jewish festival was scorched while parked in a driveway. The authorities are working to determine whether the fire was religiously motivated. Flash flood warnings are in effect in Los Angeles and Southern California amid heavy rain and danger of deadly mudslides. Evacuation centers have been opened to accommodate those ordered to relocate. The storm is expected to deliver months' worth of rain in the coming days. BBC News.
Thank you, David, for that summary of the news. Hello, you're with Newsday from the BBC World Service with Anne Soy in Nairobi and Rob Young in London. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Coming up this half hour, we'll talk to a Kenyan man who says he was duped into fighting in Ukraine, was injured, and has now returned home.
You'll also hear stories from the US, from Somalia, and as Denmark plans to end its postal service, we'll talk about the joy of sending and receiving letters. We'll get an update on the big games from the Africa Cup of Nations as well. Your thoughts welcome, of course, on all of our stories. Do send them to +44 77 86 20 50 85. Now here on Newsday, we've been investigating how young Kenyans are being lured to Russia with promises of well-paid jobs only to find themselves fighting in the war in Ukraine. Well, a few weeks ago we spoke to parents who told us their sons believed they were travelling for work, but later found themselves on the front line.
Now, for the first time, we are hearing directly from a Kenyan man who has returned home after being injured in the conflict. For security reasons, we are not naming him.
I signed documents which I didn't know. They are all in Russian. We were taken in one van. That's when we were taken now in a different place again. On arrival, we were taken to a forest. Now it's a military training forest. It was in the middle of the night. When we were taken there, men dressed in combat uniform, camouflage. That's what now made me know it's a military training. Then from there, I was deployed. The deployment, I stayed there for a month. I was in Ukraine.
Well, the Kenyan man we're hearing from managed to make it back home after being injured by a drone strike. In the second part of our interview today, he describes how he escaped from hospital in Russia, the role his family played in helping